Hi, my name is Dr. Jeffrey Allen Hinton, and today I'm going to be talking about culturally responsive pedagogy. So the question is, why should teachers use culturally responsive pedagogies? Well, the teaching force in our public schools has remained static over the years, despite the nation's rapidly changing demographics. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, for example, educators are overwhelmingly female, white, middle class, and middle-aged. Women comprise about 76% of all educators in the nation's K through 12 public schools. In elementary school, that number jumps to 89%. Further, about 79% of teachers reported that they are white, typically earn around $63,000 a year, and average about 43 years of age. On the other hand, Latinx teachers represent only about 9% of the teaching force, Black teachers about 7%, and Asian teachers only about 2%. The Brookings Institute recently reported that just 20% of the public school workforce reported that they identify as people of color, while over 50% of the student body identifies that way. This is a representation gap of about 30%. Further, researchers point out that a more diverse workforce provides long-lasting benefits to students of color. The number of teachers from diverse backgrounds has been growing since the late 1980s, but it still has a long way to go before they proportionally represent the students of color that they teach. As a result, the teachers leading most classrooms represent the mores, the values, the points of view of the dominant culture. And as a result, cultural misunderstandings may cause some teachers to view their students of color through a deficit lens. So according to Professor of Urban Education, Richard Milner, deficit thinking, or this deficit lens, is described as teachers' perceptions that students of color do not already possess the necessary skills, knowledge, and attitudes to succeed and learn. And as a result, the development of the curriculum instruction that falls short of optimal teaching and learning. In other words, some educators view students of color and their communities as problems that need to be fixed rather than as allies and as partners in their students' education. As Professor of Education Lori Patton and Samuel Musis pointed out, quote, deficit thinking is rooted in a blame the victim orientation that suggests that people are responsible for their predicament and fail to acknowledge that they live within a coercive system that causes harm with no accountability. So part of the educational system that has contributed to this kind of deficit thinking is the inability or lack of interest on part of some educators to build cultural bridges to their students, which could be an essential factor in their students' academic success. In her seminal book, Other People's Children, Cultural Conflict in the Classroom, Professor Lisa Delpit argues that there are two areas in which white teachers and their students of color experience these kinds of cultural misunderstandings. The first is the teachers' misunderstandings of their students' aptitudes, their intents, and their abilities. And this misinterpretation may result from differences in the use of language and in interactional patterns. The second area of cultural misunderstanding stems from pedagogies that are incongruent with historically marginalized students. Delpit points out that teachers may utilize styles of instruction and discipline that are at odds with the community's norms, resulting in cultural incongruence between students and teachers. As a result of school desegregation in the 1960s and the 1970s, educators have tried to teach students of color through various multicultural education approaches. Some of these you probably heard of, such as culturally appropriate, culturally congruent, culturally responsive, culturally compatible teaching. These frameworks suggest that To raise student achievement for historically marginalized students, schools should reflect students' diverse cultures by infusing the curriculum with the histories, the contributions, the achievements of diverse actors. Building on the framework of multicultural education, two dominant strands emerged, distinct from the earlier methodologies. In the mid-1970s, Professor Geneva Gay outlined the principles of culturally responsive teaching, which focused on the teaching process, or what teachers actually do in the classroom. In contrast, Gloria Ladson-Billings developed culturally relevant pedagogy as a theoretical framework to examine multiple aspects of student achievement. Geneva Gay described culturally responsive teaching as, quote, using the cultural knowledge, prior experiences, frames of reference, and performance styles of ethnically diverse students to make learning encounters more relevant and effective for them. Gay focused her research on what teachers do in the classroom, and according to her, there are 8 dimensions that characterize culturally responsive teaching. The first one is called validation. And culturally responsive teachers validate students' cultures and beliefs. That is worthy of being taught in the formal curriculum by infusing cultural information, resources, and materials in all content and skills taught in school. Additionally, teachers validate students' lived experiences and build bridges to the school by utilizing a wide range of educational approaches that capitalize on students' interests and their learning styles. Culturally responsive teachers are comprehensive, and this means that they help students of color achieve academically and maintain students' cultural identity and connections to their community by developing camaraderie and shared responsibility. In other words, teachers help students build community, or a community of learners, in which all students are expected to learn and achieve at high levels. Additionally, culturally responsive teachers are multidimensional. This means that they utilize various overlapping factors like curriculum content that reflects the diversity of the learners they're teaching. Teachers understand the racial, socio-political teaching context to build a classroom climate that elevates academic achievement for all learners. Teachers utilize various instructional tools and approaches that build on diverse students' strengths and help them improve upon their weaknesses. Culturally responsive teaching is empowering. That is to say that teachers help their students become successful by imbuing within them the confidence, the courage to take, and the belief that they can achieve their goals. These teachers encourage students to take intellectual risks and persevere in the face of challenges and adversity. In other words, teachers develop in their students grit. Culturally responsive teaching is transformative. That is to say that culturally responsive teachers engage in the work of transformation by first identifying the strengths and the accomplishments of diverse students, then enhancing those strengths through the instructional process. Students' academic success and cultural consciousness take place in tandem as students build cultural pride and awareness. Culturally responsive teaching is emancipatory as well. This means that culturally responsive teaching is psychologically and intellectually liberating for students of color because they are exposed to knowledge beyond the mainstream canon. We'll talk about this in a subsequent video when I discuss culturally responsive curriculum. Culturally responsive teaching is also humanistic. And that means that teachers uphold all of their students' welfare, their dignity, and respect across ethnic, racial, and across social groups. And lastly, socially or culturally responsive pedagogy is ethical, in that culturally responsive teachers help students dismantle the hegemony of the dominant culture on education policies, on practices, They interrupt the notion that education is cultureless, unbiased, and colorblind. Okay, so that's a overview of Geneva Gay. Next, I want to talk about Gloria Ladson Billings, and she introduced the idea of culturally relevant pedagogy, what she described as a pedagogy that empowers students intellectually, socially, emotionally, and politically by using cultural reference to impart knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And she designed the framework after observing successful teachers of African American students and noting that there was a commonality in terms of their beliefs and their ideologies towards the students that they were teaching. The framework consists of three main components. The first and the most important aspect of culturally relevant pedagogy focuses on student learning and academic achievement. Successful teachers of historically marginalized students have high expectations for all students and believe that all students can succeed academically. In other words, teachers see all of their students as being uniquely brilliant. In addition, teachers must possess knowledge and the skills in developing students' cultural competence. This means that students must be able to maintain their cultural integrity while being academically successful. Successful teachers achieve this by helping students navigate between their home cultures and the school culture by acknowledging and pushing back against the implicit bias that is built into the education system. Lastly, culturally responsive pedagogy means that teachers help their students engage in learning tasks that require them to recognize and understand and critique current social inequities. Critical consciousness must begin with the teacher, who must recognize the socio-political issues of race, class, and gender first within themselves before integrating them into the curriculum. All right, well, that is my overview of culturally responsive pedagogy. Thank you for watching. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Allen Hinton, and I'm located on the web at www.jeffreyahinton.com. And there you can find my blog, videos, as well as other free content. Again, thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.